Okay, in this video, I'm gonna. The real reason is to talk about Wheel of Time, but I'm gonna do so in the context of uh, reviewing the show, and with plenty of spoilers throughout. I will, in fact, be spoiling all of the books, all of the show, um, even New Spring, the prequel, and then in addition to that, I'll be doing all sorts of theorizing and mentioning theories I've heard, so watch out for that. Full spoilers, no mercy. Don't go read the books. Um, the video is going to be using screenshots because I can't be bothered to edit all the video, and I don't want to get hit for copyright or whatever. Um, Spoilers, screenshots. So yeah, I've read all the books. I've watched the show probably like 7 times all the way through. I think it's really good. Quite liking it. Um, I want to point out that I like the show. I like the books. Always read the books. Love the books. I like the show in the context of Hollywood bullshit. Typical Hollywood trash. Hollywood releases a bunch of just random junk. Just action stuff for the kids. Meaningless, throw it away. Fast food, right? McMovies. Okay. But occasionally there are some gems. For example, I really liked Rogue One in the Star Wars movies, right? You know, the 3 original movies were campy, silly, but they worked. They were great, you know. And then the next 3 movies, utter trash. The next 3 movies, utter trash. The next 3 movies, utter trash. And then Solo, trash. I still watched it for the action, right? I watched it for the action and for what's her name. Um, and then, but Rogue One was like actually good, like actually a good movie, right? The writing was good, the dialogue was sharp and realistic, and the way humans actually speak and things like that, right? It had some gravitas toward it, in it. So, in the context of a bunch of Hollywood junk, the show here, the Wheel of Time show, does pretty great. Pretty great. I've got no problems as long as you can kind of turn off certain parts of your brain while watching it. It's perfectly great. It's obviously but then one obvious thing here is that it isn't what we all wanted. It isn't a scene for scene recreation of the books because guess what? You can't do that. Surprise, surprise, right? You know, the only way you could do that would be by the comic book author. If you haven't seen, there's Wheel of Time comics. Go look them up. They're incredible. The only way you can do that is by doing incredible artwork and then literally just putting the words from the book on the screen, right? Which is kind of the same, kind of defeats the purpose, right? And that's okay because how do you do things like give Rand's impression of or Egwene's, for example, impression of the slipperiness of the threads as she weaves a gateway or unweaves a gateway? How do you do that? How do you express that in a show? You can't. You just tell someone about it, right? So it was never going to happen. And in that context, this is great. And I really like that they nailed absolutely just came down hard on the characterization. I love to see the actual characters brought to life really well. Like for me, there's like maybe 2 characters who kind of don't match a little bit. That's it. That's fantastic, right? That's amazing. Okay. And I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to break each screenshot. Each screenshot is going to be like a scene. And each scene, I'm going to break it down into some components. The first component is the audio visual. How well did they do on the graphics and the scenery and the look of the characters and the costumes and such, and as well as the sound. I really don't have a lot to say about the music apparently, but the sound, especially while channeling and such, the screams of Trollocs, the screams of villagers, things like that, accents perhaps, yeah, things of that nature. Okay, and then the second thing I'm going to mention on every scene is the amount of cringe. So some acting is terrible, and sometimes the writing is terrible, and sometimes the directing is terrible. Okay, It's just going to be cringeworthy, and I'll mention that, or when it's not, right? And then the other thing, and then the third thing I'm going to mention on all of these is the accuracy to the books. When it violates it wholeheartedly, and when it sticks to it and hints at things. So, all right, let's get going. Okay, now here's the first scene I'm going to talk about. I'm gonna skip the Red Ajah chasing down the man channeler, although I would like to make one point about that. We'll talk about all that later. The only point I want to make now and not later is what was the outfit of that guy supposed to indicate that the guy chased down? I'm not sure where they were necessarily. They were around the two rivers because that's was where Moraine was heading, basically. Was he near? She said she was near Tyr and all the way up to the two rivers. So was he perhaps from the Almouth Plain, like a bandit? I'm not really sure. Anyway, so this scene here, we're gonna start out with the visuals, and the very first thing I notice is, for one, the costuming. So let's take a look at the costuming. It's very good for country living. These people are bundled up. Look at that. Look at that. That is some thick clothing right there. That's realistic, right? You don't realize it, but out there, that's like 56 degrees. That's chilly. That's chilly. And if they're up in the mountains, it could be like 50 or 45, right, on a good day in the sun. Love that. Other thing I love is that these are just a bunch of regular women. Somebody just went to the street and said, you, and you, all of you, come here. You know, that's somebody's grandma right there. These are just regular people. And it doesn't, I really like that because it doesn't look like they do what they normally do, which is have an actor's casting call and pick, you know, the 17 hottest women who fit whatever age group they need, the most perfect people. It's not like that. These are regular folks. Although, I did notice last time, none of them have acne. None of them are obese. So they're all slightly prettier, normal people, right? So, but that's great. I like that. The second thing to note is the diversity. I was gonna say there's all but one white face, but not really, right? There's some Asian there. I think it's more like Thailand. South Pacific Islander. I can't remember the phrase. Anyway, yeah. So there's a couple different. The diversity is getting pretty good, and if you read in the books, this is part of it. Although being white male, cis hetero, something, whatever, I definitely envisioned everybody in the books as white unless explicitly told otherwise. Right? When it said they have dark skin and dark hair and dark eyes, I was like, oh, she's like slightly tanned. That's just I grew up middle America surrounded by white people, so it's just provincialism. But I'm loving that they have just a massive range of humanity, which is going to give them a lot more to play with, and they're going to need it later in the story, because of course that's part of the Wheel of Time, is that it's a very diverse group. So that's the audio visuals. I want to mention one other quick thing. Look at that quarterstaff. That is 2 rivers to the bone. That's perfect. That lady would whoop your ass with that quarterstaff. That's great. Also, they all have a braid. They're paying attention to the costuming. They're getting it right. All right, they're taking it seriously. Quite cool. That's the audio visual. Cringe in this whole scene, right? And this is the scene that includes Nynaeve. I get to say this however I want. You just have to deal with it. Talking to Egwene, or Edgewini, as I called her when I hated the name. How the hell do you say this name? It was ridiculous. Egwene works for me. When they were talking, it was like one of those really embarrassing, cringy moments, like, this is gonna be the best moment of, I mean, it's just ridiculously overblown, silly, cringe-worthy stuff, right? Like if you went to a Baptist revival or something, and people were praising the Lord and having the Spirit of God enter them, you know, gets really cringeworthy. So the writing at that point was kind of terrible, or or the writing or the directing. When I say something is cringeworthy, please understand that I mean either the actor did a poor job acting it, or the writer wrote something too overly sappy and dramatic, saccharine, right? Or the director didn't read the writing properly and made the actor do something that didn't match what the writer intended, right? Either one of those could be at fault. I have no way of knowing what the production was, what happened during the production. So that part was cringy. A lot of staring, not longingly, but meaningfully into one another's eyes. I mean, it's just a lot of genuine smile. It's too much. It's over the top. It's saccharine. Let's see, cringe, audio, visual. The audio here, I didn't hear. I don't know. I didn't hear anything. You can talk about the intro show, the show intros, the show's intro audio. Beautiful song. The first couple of times I heard it, I was like, that's just meaningless. I don't hear anything. What is it? Sounds good, And then over time, I was like, whoa, wait. That's really good. And it really grew on me. And it grew fast. And I was like, oh, this is really good. So I quite like the intro rather a lot. Intro music. But during this scene, I didn't really hear any audio. I don't know. Didn't pay attention to what was going on. It was just kind of background piano, I guess. As to the accuracy of the books, now, my first take on this was it's not accurate because we didn't ever hear anything about the induction ceremony of the women's circle. That was never a thing that was really discussed. It was just, there is a women's circle. That's about it, right? But now I'm remembering that when, later in the books, when the three girls get with the kin, right, and there's all that exploration, then they go back to and Perrin goes back to the two rivers and everything. Like, there might be some explanation of the induction ceremony of the women's circle. So maybe I'm misremembering something, but I don't recall anything explicit being said about this, so they've made it all up. Now, they've made it all up in ways that are not explicitly disallowed by the book. So, boom, done, right off the bat. Have at it. Go. Yes, please. More. Would you like more Wheel of Time? Yes, please. Serve up, dish me more. Yes, please. No problems there. And we'll get to this next one. Okay, so there's the accuracy of the books. And Eve, Egwene, older people in the women's circle, the women's council, the women's circle. Okay, next scene. Okay, second scene here. This is the river scene. Okay, let's dive right into it. Audio and visuals. I did have an issue with the audio here. The river sound, I'm assuming that was great, I don't know. But the music, while she was going down the river, was ridiculously overly dramatic. Just well outside the silliness range. Sorry. A very cringy soundtrack. Sounded like I was, at a rave, 6 hours into an ecstasy trip with the bass just going. It's ridiculous. It's way too much. It was way too intense. It's just a river. But visually, it was obviously stunning. I can't recall what country this ended up being in. I keep thinking something like Ukraine or thereabouts. Some Eastern European country, I think is what it was. The Czech Republic or something, right? No, it was one of the stands, like Uzbekistan or something. Kyrgyzstan. I can't remember. Anyway, quite interesting. So audio and visual. Yeah. I don't remember the underwater effects, but whatever, pretty standard drowning in a river scene. Cringe-worthiness. Just the music and the bit of an over-dramatization of it. It's pretty terrifying, without a doubt, to plunge feet first, 20, 25 feet down into a river and go down. That's pretty scary, but it was too much. That's really about it. There wasn't a whole lot of talking. And her, I believe her name is Madeline, her, panicked breathing in the river and gasping for air and such, it was a little overblown. But it's supposed to, what is this, like the first couple of scenes? You got to get it really intense to get people into it. Wasn't too bad, no big objections, really. Um, as to accuracy of the books, for one, we don't know about the induction ceremony for the women's circle, so okay, they're just playing off of that. No problems there. And I would like to note that even while inventing new stuff, they went back and made sure to tie something in a way that matters. Okay, so Naive whispers, "Go with the flow." Right, let yourself go with the flow. Right, let the river guide you. I believe, and that's Sadar. That's how you channel Sadar. You allow it to force you around, and then within that you get to tell it what to do. This is teaching Egwene to do that, beginning to listen to the wind. Great, wonderful, awesome. Accuracy of the books. Yeah, everything else is great. I do. Oh, the other thing, Egwene at this point, I can't remember now. There's something about whether she had a braid yet or not. At this point, we're seeing her earn her braid. Yeah, we're seeing her earn her braid, and this is the night before Beltane or thereabouts, right? Pretty close. So I can't remember in the books if she already had it or was just barely earning it on their journeys. Maybe that is actually what happened. I believe they're in the ways, and Naive was helping Egwene twist her braid or do her braid or undo her braid or something like that. Oh, that's what it was. No. Eventually, after lessons with Moraine, Egwene undid her braid. Or maybe she's with the Tinkers. Because it's a symbolically leaving the two rivers behind. And then I did want to mention one thing here. I wanted to mention the lack of sexualization of the character. We have a beautiful young woman. This would be the time to do it. The intro of the show, bam, we're going to have excitement. We're going to have sex. We're going to have violence, right? They're trying to do that. They didn't do that. In this scene here, there's clearly some sort of stiff underwear or something, or they blurred it or whatever it is, right? They passed an opportunity to sexualize someone. Good stuff. Now, of course, later they have the bath scenes, which we won't be showing, unfortunately. But, alright, next scene. Okay, the scene at the inn, at the Wine Spring Inn. Now, this was also included in another scene. I believe it swapped straight to Rand and Tam walking the Quarry Road back through the Westwood. I think it's the Westwood. On the way to the village with their brandy, their apple brandy. Mm. Swallowing my beer again. So so that was the first part of the scene, and then the second part of the scene was the boys and Egwene interacting in the bar, and then Moraine and Lan come in. Okay. Step one, I want to mention that previously I didn't notice anything about the audio, the music, or the audio that was going on. And I think that was because I listened to a lot of Lorena McKinnon, which is kind of like Enya. It's Celtic music. It's ancient Celtic drums and such and flutes and whatnot. And this music that they put to this village fits absolutely perfectly. It's rocking. It's great. It feels like a leather drum is being pounded right behind your back. Good stuff. And that's on headphones, right? Yeah, so the music fit perfectly for a celebration in an inn, in a village in the mountains. Beautiful stuff. And of course, visually, the mountains. My God, man. Oh my God. I don't. That's just incredible. The scenery Hollywood puts out these days is crazy. Really quite liked that. I also liked the village set. The set of the village. I thought that was very good. Everything looked. I didn't not necessarily like from far away. I just thought, yeah, it's a village. But when you got up close to it, I don't know. I just liked it, and I didn't see anything particularly different about it. It looked good. So, the cringe of this. Um, Tam got a tiny little bit too familiar, too sappy, a little bit too sappy, but really not that much. Like maybe even came in a little bit below too sappy, so it was extra sappy but not too sappy, right? It was right there on the border, but it was a good line, you know. It was a good line with Tam saying, "Hey, Rand, you used to bring her flowers when you were a kid." Blah blah blah. Good stuff. Um, where it did get a little weird was Matt pushing everybody. Matt did a very good job of being a pressuring prick. All right, somebody who pushes beyond, almost up to the boundaries. A salesman. It's like being friends with a seller, like a salesman. It kind of wears on you after a while. It's kind of annoying, right? Come on, man. Now we know in the background he's doing it because he's trying to scrape together enough shit for his kids to live. Effectively, it's what's going on here. Or the Beltane thingies. The little paper candles or whatever it is. Which I just love the image of that in a forest. Yes, let's float a bunch of fire down the lake, down the river. Visually cringe. Yes, cringe. So really one of the only cringe-worthy parts I detected was the entrance of Lan and Moraine. When Lan walks through the door, cool. But then he pauses for a dramatic moment and slowly reveals his hood, and then stands to the side, Moraine, and then she walks in, glares around. It's just way overblown, well beyond the level of appropriate behavior in the circumstance. But you have to remember that when in the books, Moraine comes to town and she is just a lady. She's not an Aes Sedai, she's just a lady. Because remember, people can't recognize the look of agelessness off the bat. You have to be trained to see it. It's not something people normally recognize. You're just a person who they can't pin an age on right then. So they all just see her as a popular lady with her sidekick, you know, some dude, right? Bodyguard, protector, man at arms. And when she comes to town, she is just a lady, and the kids all flock to see her. The villagers want to talk to her. She talks to the women's circle, you know, does stuff like that. And then eventually, over time, she comes to make it known. So at some point during her visit, she does lord the fact that she's an Aes Sedai, not deliberately, but the fact that she is an Aes Sedai is impressed upon everyone here. Oh my god, there's a literal Aes Sedai. That person can shoot fire. Okay, a real wizard, right? Like if, we understand. So all that they're doing is taking that and compressing that all into one scene here. She walks into the room. Now there's an instant realization that this is an Aes Sedai, a literal Aes Sedai. No Aes Sedai has ever come to this village. No lady has ever come to this village. The most you get here is rich merchants. That's it. No one alive here has even seen a lord or a lady. That's not true, but not here. Okay, so they've taken something that kind of did happen in the books and compressed it a little bit more, but they did it cringily. Now, a thing to note here. Well, just accuracy as to the books. Tam coming and Rand coming down the road. Yep, it all fits pretty well. More wolves in the mountains. Yep, fits pretty well. We now know what it is. It is the Trollocs being brought in over time through the way gates by, I'm still not clear on exactly who. I don't know if Ishmael was free and was controlling a Dreadlord, some Black Aes Sedai by, or Pen Fane, huh? Pen Fane, that's right. He was going to the way gates and letting them out. That's right. Yeah, controlling them through his dreams. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He explained that he was created into a hound long before, and that he was searching the environs for that. So the Trollocs and the Myrddraal are hiding up in the mountains, forcing the wolves to go down. which Perrin could have recognized but didn't. We accuracy as to the books. Obviously, the whole Matt storyline is weird and different and changed completely. In the books, his sister's bowed coffin, and I can't remember the other one. And his parents were just a normal, happy family. Everything was great about him, no problems. But they've given him a backstory here for some reason, just like with Perrin. Um, totally inaccurate. Them all bullshitting at the end, though, fits quite well. Um, Matt stealing from someone in the village? Literally stealing? No. Pranking? Yes. So definite changes to the everything there. Moraine walking into the room and eyeballing everybody like she doesn't give a fuck what they think about her. And then going and focusing on the one thing that she does care about, which is the three boys. That is to a T what happened. Now, we don't know it at the time. It isn't described to us like that at the time. But later we and it may be a little compressed, but later we discover that yes, when Moraine walked into town, one of the first things she did was identify the three Ta'veren and compel them, cast compulsion on them, flat out. Now it's not Greyandal's compulsion, right? But she somehow had to wrap it up into a token that they had to hold on to, and the coins, and she gave it to them, right? Quote in the book from later is, I gave you that coin. You should have been willing to do anything, go along with whatever I wanted to do, but you resisted. That's the end of the quote. In other words, she compelled him, right? Instantly get a connection to those boys. And another thing she does is selectively choose who to heal. She heals Rand's father because he's one of the Ta'veren, not any of the other people's fathers, just that one, so that she can establish a tie to Rand's father and get a favor. Oh, and Rand now owes her a favor. Right? She is coming in and doing exactly what she needs to do to get this shit under control. No questions. So that's what she did here in this scene. No questions. Right? So they got that part right. Accuracy to the books. Okay. Okay, and then we have the explicit Perrin wife change to the story. I'm gonna skip audio, visual, and even cringe because it's just a short little segment here. But I just one quick remark. The first couple of times through, I actually totally missed what was going on here. I had no idea. I missed one critical line. I missed when Perrin said, "You didn't even go to her ceremony." I missed that. So what I saw was his wife in his forge. I didn't know why she was working in the forge. That seemed a little odd to me. But I was like, okay. But then I noticed, oh, she's pregnant. So I was like, okay, so she's in one of those moods where, like, the women just, like, they're pregnant and they want to use all of their energy. Or you get a lot of weird stuff when you're pregnant, right? So I thought she was just having... That's why in the Naive told him, hey, it's hard to work iron alone. Clue, clue, go back to your forge and see to Layla. So I thought that's what was going on. And then she was reluctant to even speak to him. She didn't say anything. She didn't, she was all doubtful looking when he said he loved her and everything. I was like, oh, she's probably just in a mood. She's pregnant and she's going through mood swings. But of course, this instead is setting up the Perrin and Egwene thing. And now, if you cast back to the previous scene, it makes kind of a little more sense. Perrin said, oh, give Egwene my best, and he looked at her a little longer than was necessary at some point during the bar scene. So this is all making sense. It's all building up to something, and I don't like it. It's not accurate at all. I don't like any of it. I do like the part where it feeds into his story about the Way of the Leaf. That's great. That's a great little tie-in, but again, that would have been achieved much easier by simply staying accurate to the book, so I don't really know why that was necessary. Okay, and then the next small, quick little scene here, we're also going to skip the audio, visual, and the cringe. We've got straight to the next massive change. They've changed Matt's backstory significantly. Um, the only thing I have to mention here is that there's an interesting class dynamic here. They're kind of bringing class into it because Matt, if you look later in this scene where Matt brings his mother home, he's living basically in a barn. I mean, they're all living in a barn. It's a medieval tavern, medieval village, right? But like they're living in one room shack with bugs and shitty blankets and the smell of pigs and the sound of pigs in the next stall, right? Pretty bad stuff. And Matt's got no money even for the monthly or the yearly Beltane celebration. Pretty bad stuff. He is the lowest of the low class. Above him, you have Rand, who has a real nice farm out in the Westwood. Tam, well set up dude. He's a widower. All the women are after him. Makes brandy and such. And then you've got the upper class, which is Egwene and her father, the literal mayor, who owns the giant stone building in town, the inn. Probably pays for all sorts of things, including Matt's family, in the town. So interesting. They've made it a little more class conscious at this point, which is quite interesting. Apologies for the voice. I'm better now. Here we have the tavern scene where Rand and Egwene get some on-screen characterization. They get some good time together. We also have the brief interlude of the Aes Sedai and her warder taking a bath in the local tavern. Pretty interesting. I love that they characterized Lan a little bit differently here, right? He was asking for hot water, which that's not a thing. Come on, he would never do that. That's silly. But it's great. It's a good way to, make sense. Or it's poking the bear, which can be fun in its own right. Then we have Egwene and Rand talking, and it's about her leaving she's already beginning to leave the village behind, sort of. At least leave village life, right? Leave the people of the village behind. She's going to become a wisdom. You don't have any kids. You don't have a husband. You don't have whatever. You travel from village to village or farm to farm at least. And you have a job, a big job, and it's a massive thing. And she's already starting to leave, and that's well in keeping with her character. Quite like that. Rand at this point is still he's still a Two Rivers kid. He's still looking at life that way. And that's pretty good. Oops, let me get my notes here. Yes. The writing. I don't know. It was pretty sharp dialogue. I loved the scene with the object. He pulls a strawberry out of his pocket, which came from the earlier scene, and just true to Egwene, they're really just nailing the fucking characters, spot on. She's like, "Does that fit in your pocket?" And it's so good. That was quite charming, quite good. Like the land thing, they understand the characters. They poke a little fun at them here and there, but that's so that you can see the character that is on the screen. You get to know them. I wanted to talk for a moment about the gesturing while using the one power. We have that same dichotomy, that same paradigm that I mentioned at the beginning of the video in the intro, where this is Hollywood junk. It's trash. It's McMovies, right? It's McFantasy. They've turned it in. They've downgraded it into McFantasy. They've cut away all the gravitas and everything else. But and in so doing, one of the things they've done is they've made the magic stupid, silly, childish, ridiculous, overblown, saccharine. And the way they've done that in this one is making it magic foo, right? You sit there and you're doing all sorts of gestures to make your just silly and ridiculous, right? It's far more interesting to see, for example, Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, right? When he casts a spell, what does he do? He does this. He raises his staff. That's it. You don't need anything more. You don't need to be dancing around doing silly nonsense. That's ridiculous. I mean, it could be done well, right? Equilibrium. Equilibrium had a lot of silly nonsense in the fighting, but then sometimes it had really great uh, action bullet fighting, right? Fighting with a gun. Like you and your opponent have a gun to each other's head. What's the first thing you do? You push that gun away. You control the motion of their gun, right? It was somewhat grounded in reality. Yeah. So it had a little more serious. It took it a little more seriously. Which hand? Yeah, there we go. That's hard. So the magic in here, Moraine is just gesture. I mean, it's just silly. It's just silly nonsense, and that's going to become a recurring problem. The visuals in the scene, I quite liked Perrin's bed. It just had a brief flash of Perrin in bed with his wife. I really liked that the bed was small, tucked into a corner, right next to a window. But their wool blankets were huge wool blankets, real thick. I forgot to mention this in the earlier scene. Two Rivers is a wool sheep shearers, or it's all about sheeps and tobacco, right? you know. So yeah, it's great. That was a really good. All the visuals looked great. Um, the tavern looked a little weird because you had the sound of the wind blowing outside as they closed down the scene of Egwene and Rand. Egwene having decided to listen to the wind and forsake a family and Rand. And then you have her listen to the wind, and it's troubling because a Fade is walking into town, but the candles are blowing in the tavern. Are the windows open? What the hell is going? It was ridiculous. Anyway, again, silly nonsense that was just added for visual effect, and nobody cares whether it matches the story or has any internal consistency. The Fade, the look of the Fade, I'm not hugely impressed with that. I don't think they needed to do some weird nonsense with the nose like they did, or even the teeth of the mouth, right? Why do you really need to do that? The idea was that they look like regular people, just really pale, and then they have no eyes. It didn't seem like you needed to change that. I don't know why. It could have. The look of the eyeless is fear, but I guess that's really maybe that's really hard to convey visually, and they wanted to convey it visually instead of explicitly stating it during some certain scene where it becomes relevant. I'm not sure. You can clearly see Rosamund Pike take a nice big eyeful of Lan's junk. The acting in this one, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Rand has got that shit nailed. He knows what he's doing. He's got that character nailed. Egwene is pretty good. Yeah, I don't see any issues with it. None of the acting seemed. Well, obviously Lan, right? Lan is a very different character than he was in the book. He would never be sitting there in the bathtub, luxuriating in the warm water and showing it. It's just not going to happen, right? Matt and Padan Fain as well. I quite like Padan Fain. They did really well. The teeth, that's cool. It definitely gives him an aura of fear. I mean, it's unusual. I mean, the teeth themselves don't do it, right? But the fact that I know who he is and the creepy little whistle and everything else, right? It's really quite cool. I believe he was described as having beak nose, just a big nose, but you got to make him look scary, and they've done a great job. Or at least I'm projecting onto his character, the fear. Yeah, the acting was pretty good. Didn't see any issues with that whatsoever. The sound and the music, the wind was a little overblown. It was inside the tavern. You're hearing it. That's kind of strange. But again, you might be perceiving what Egwene is perceiving through the sound of the windows. She can hear things outside with the power, right? Who knows? Nothing really about the. Oh, a quick note on the writing as well. In this case, the dialogue between Matt and Padan Fain was real sharp, real snappy, real good stuff. That was good. I really like how he did that. 1 mark, half a mark. Fuck, come on, man.
I really like that. Can I sell this in this town? You know, ouch, ouch. He's got the instincts. I quite like that. Matt learned a lot from him, I'm sure. Accuracy as to the books, obviously, we're way out of line here on multiple ways. I don't recall whether Rand and Egwene ever had any sort of conversation about anything like this. Well, no, no, no. There was a moment when the boys had received the coins, and they were standing at the door of the inn, unloading and loading the casks of apple brandy that Tam had brought. And then Moraine stopped by, and then like Perrin and Matt stopped by, and then they were all together, and then Egwene briefly stopped by, right? It was the meeting before the dramatic stuff starts happening. And I think during that time there may have been quite a bit said about, oh really? You really like this lady from outside of town? Maybe you want to leave town. You know, hint hint. Things kind of like that were happening. So again, they're hitting the high notes while just making up their own shit behind the scenes for some reason. Next up, we have just a quick scene again, brief interlude here. I just wanted to mention this mountain scene when Rand goes up to the mountain to sit and ponder his life around Two Rivers and such. He grew up in the mountains. I liked one thing in particular about this scene. I liked that it showed that Rand is complete. A lot of heroes will get some sort of major flaw in them, right? So if I were to be written into a hero, it would be that I was, you know, I could be clever about things, I could figure things out, I would be purpose driven, I would have an exact goal in mind and work toward it without compromise. But then I would lack significantly certain humane aspects. Now, I'm not saying I would be merciless or something, but I mean I wouldn't like get along with the other people around me. I wouldn't be good at meeting all of my needs emotionally, socially, perhaps even like controlling my own anger or something like that, right? There would be some issues like that. But here Rand is demonstrating that he's not just, you know, clever. He's probably not as clever as Matt, maybe, or is getting close or whatever. He's decently intelligent, but he's not. I mean, he's not like Moraine. The woman's 80 years old, and has honed her mind to razor sharp perfection. Right? She's nowhere near that clever. And later with Tom, Tom's pretty sharp. But he's not just intelligent. He's not just tall and capable and physically capable and whatnot. But he's also well in tune with others, what they need, what they're feeling, what's going on. You know, and that was quite invigorating. That he knew what she was thinking. I mean, he knows that. He knows what's going on. He knows what she's deciding. He knows what choice she's making, and he knows what choice she will make because he knows who she is. And that was quite enjoyable. This song is pretty common. I'm not a fan of it. I figured I'd mention that. Accuracy as to the books. Oh, I thought the acting was quite good. I did notice one editing mistake. There was one scene wherein Rand was looking at Egwene, waiting for her to process stuff. Right. You know, he made his case quite clear. What about a family? What about kids? You know, and he was waiting for her to make her decision. And his eyes were clearly portraying that he was waiting. And then the scene switched to another angle, and his eyes were simply staring. No portrayal of him waiting for any sort of answer. Or it wasn't that he was eager; it was that he was awaiting a response. And whereas his new gaze didn't give that impression at all. So a little bit of an editing issue there. But accuracy as to the books. I flat out don't remember. Wish I did. And now we have a scene where Nynaeve and Moraine, I think they met before, right? They met before. They talked momentarily before, but It was in front of a bunch of other people, and it certainly wasn't for so long, I think. Um, I quite like the dialogue here seems fairly sharp, fairly clear. I mean, I know what's going on. I'm reading things behind the scenes or behind the. I'm reading the subtext of the speech that they're giving, the dialogue. It makes good sense. It's pretty interesting. It's implying things. I do like that. I definitely think they're overplaying. Are they really overplaying Naive? Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. Maybe not. I think they are overplaying Naive a little bit. She's always been prickly. Prickly, but the idea is that she's prickly about irrational things. Things that shouldn't matter. Too prickly, right? Not just prickly, but too prickly. In inappropriate circumstances, because she's like 25 years old. She hasn't really gained full control of her adult faculties yet, or hasn't gained mastery of her emotions and everything else. And her ego, basically, is what it is. And they portray that okay here, but I think they just ever so slightly missed the mark, making it more about they're trying to justify her prickliness, which the idea was it was never really justified. I mean, she was fully justified in being threatened by a rich lady, and then an Aes Sedai come to a small village during a war and whatnot. Absolutely, that's perfectly justified. But the interpersonal reactions were always just weird, right? I actually knew a gentleman in real life who seemed to have no concept of tone of voice. He didn't realize that you can't let every inner feeling into your tone of voice because other people perceive that as rude. If you said something stupid to him, he would literally scoff at you and say, "That's stupid." Right? And you're like, "Excuse me?" But he actually felt that. And other than that, he was a perfectly okay gentleman. Well, he wasn't, but I mean, he was a normal standard human, right? You know, same with her. She's a normal standard human, except she's way too egotistical. Egotistic. Huh. Egoist? No. Anyway, so I thought the writing was pretty decent there. First of all, second of all, what the heck cave is this? A bath? A sacred cave? What? Who? Where'd this come from? What are we talking about here? It's totally irrelevant. Never enters the story again, as far as I know. It's kind of silly. And about her past. Well, let's talk about that later. Visuals. Weird. I didn't like the milky water. Stone looked a little fake. You can hear me? Oh, something cut out there. Seemed a little too convenient. The visuals just seemed a little too. The set design seemed not quite up to the normal standards. The lighting was good, like great lighting in there and whatnot, but the rest of it just kind of seemed. It doesn't seem like it's enough of a natural cavern. It seems just kind of like a set. Okay, the acting here, pretty good stuff. You have facial expressions, you have physical movement, and you have speech. All of them working in tandem, on time, at the appropriate time, even in the appropriate measure. I thought it was quite good. Again, with the exception of Naive's sudden explosions of whatever the fuck, right? I have teenagers, so I know exactly what she is, what she's going through, right? What she's feeling. No real issues with the acting in this one. Sound and music, I don't recall anything really. Nothing much going on there. The accuracy as to the books. So Moraine and Naive, they mix and they yeah, so I recall there was a rather long session of them interacting. First you have where they're interacting along the road with the kids as they're running. No, you don't. She tracks them later. Never mind. You have the village, and then later you have the parts of the story where they're being forced together, right? I remember they go into a White Cloak camp and rescue the kids, rescue Perrin and whatnot. So they're forced to get along, and of course, Naive is herself, and this is all the exact same thing. Moraine is saying fairly realistic and normal standard stuff. You know, hey, I don't know who you are. You know, She's being quite rational, but Naive is having none of it because she's just not unwilling to trust, and Moraine is not willing to discuss the question of whether she can be trusted or should be trusted. She's leaving that up to, you have to trust me. You don't really have a choice, right? Um, so all that, I mean, it matches the books fairly well. All the whole history of Naive's past and whatnot, I honestly don't remember any of that. I don't remember what Naive's past is. I knew she. I do recall something about her not being a Two Rivers person, maybe, or being coming from outside. But I always assumed it was just a nearby village. Perhaps that's not the case. Maybe I've missed that. But one thing that is weird is that, again, this. I hope this is not making noise. This example that Naive gives of some old peasant lady going to the White Tower. Fuck. Some old peasant lady going to the White Tower and being turned away based on class reasons. What? No, part of the whole premise of the White Tower is that we'll take anyone. Queen. There's queens in there, and there's peasant ladies in there. And every accepted, and then what's the middle range? No, accepted is the high range. The low range, Aes Sedai, accepted, and whatever the learners are, I forget. Novices, yes. Every novice is reduced to a child because, from the context of an Aes Sedai, I'm 80 years old and I know about magic. You're a fucking child, right? That makes no sense. They don't do that. Quite likely what happened is that Naive just got a bad impression of what happened and thought they turned her away because she was poor, when in reality they turned her away because she didn't have either the fortitude, internal fortitude, or the magical power. Although, is there a lower limit to the power? Do Aes Sedai turn applicants away based on power level? I think they don't, right? Because aren't there very, very weak Aes Sedai? And you get told later that the very weak Aes Sedai are far weaker than the more powerful, that extra group who didn't go to the Aes Sedai. They leave, and I forget who they are, in one of the CD or cities, right? The Rahaj and whatnot. The kin. So they're a very powerful kin. So are the Aes Sedai instead turning people away due to their internal fortitude? I keep wanting to say intestinal fortitude. Sorry. Maybe that's the case, right? She just got turned away for that reason. But either way, they've spun this into something different, which is inaccurate and weird. And there we have it. I like that Moraine snuck up on her. That was good. I probably didn't help the temper. And now we have Rand, Tam, and Bella. Wait, is it Bella? Is that his horse? Well, whatever horse is pulling their wagon. Pulling back into the farm after some village scenes. We got some great village character building here. Good stuff. So, first thing that happens is Matt, sitting at a table, reads Perrin like a book. Reads Rand like a book. He knew he and Rand and Egwene were talking about some serious stuff. He knew exactly what happened. You know, very clever, very sharp dialogue. Quite like it. Matt is amazing. Shame the guy left. Although I saw a picture of the new guy, and cool. I can work with that. All right. They got the look. They've nailed the look down, right? We'll see how he acts in real life. Who knows, right? Interesting thing I noted on that scene was that Perrin was clueless about Rand and Egwene's talk. Or did he not want to know? Did he not want to think about it? Did he not want to know? Right? It's easier when you're married to just not think about other women than to come to the good conclusion, I guess. I've never been married. But another thing that happened was Nynaeve and Egwene listened to the wind on the bridge. Great scenery, my god. Lan was wandering the forest and found a dragon's fang shape of sheep guts, eaten sheep, although they didn't eat all the sheep. So it was just like a symbol. Was it Pad and Fane instead of the Trollocs? And then we saw that Moraine was in the village spying on the boys, watching them. And then the boys, we had the scene with Matt, Rand and Perrin giving Matt money for his sisters, or just for money, which someone pointed out in the comments. He had already gotten the money for the lantern, so he didn't need that money. So he was guilty having to accept the money, knowing that he had already stolen and sold somebody's belongings to get what he needed. Interesting stuff. I'm curious about what they're doing about Matt. So the writing here, all of it seemed pretty good. Moraine and Egwene, Nynaeve and Egwene standing on the bridge listening to the wind. It was interesting. Nynaeve actually, you'll get this a lot in scenes where, okay, in this situation on the bridge, we have two people casting magic, right? Listening to the magic. Okay. And one of them is a learner, one of them is a teacher. In most books, they'll create conflict by having the teacher be a fucking moron and not tell them obvious fucking shit that they fucking need to know, that every goddamn person in the fucking world knows they need to know. But for some reason, they're fucking incompetent and can't properly communicate and can't think. That didn't happen here. Now, Nynaeve told her, I've never heard this before. I don't know what this is. Thank you for keeping us in the fucking loop, right? Good God, is it really that hard? Good writing in this case. Proper writing, realistic writing, right? Born identity, things make sense. Internal consistency, Rogue One. People act that way, it makes sense. It's internally consistent, right? Those are just two examples that happen to pop to my head. I'm sure they're not the best examples I could have chosen. I'm sure there's many others. Lord of the Rings. Yeah, so say when Aragorn meets Eowyn on the bridge. Eowyn? The elf lady, I don't remember. My God, I don't remember her name. That's bad. On the bridge. Look, he tells her, oh, hello, boom, fact. Here's what's going on. Here you go. Here's what needs to happen. Boom, done. She can properly make a plan. She can properly think and participate. Thank you. Right? My God. Regular fucking human interaction. Alright, we found my trigger there, apparently. The writing in this, yes. Lan out in the forest wandering around finding things. Nothing there. Moraine spying on the boys. Very good. I like that. I quite like that. Yeah, the rest of it makes sense. Visually, I like the look of the coins. The look of the coins was extremely primitive. Like, they were just faded, dirty, stained sheets of metal. That's it. You could barely even see. You really couldn't even see what was imprinted on them. It was just backwoods, money. Cool. It kind of worked. A lot of stained glass, though, for a backwoods village, right? It's not stained glass in backwoods village. It's thick glass that's been dyed. So thick you can't really see through it. It just lets light through it. It just distorts everything, right? That was back in the old days. The glass technology progresses in how thin you can make the glass. That was kind of the idea, while still maintaining stability and embedding. I hit the wine a little bit. Embedding it in things. So that's the visuals. The acting is all really good. It's all top notch. A lot of good kind of cringy for the characters, not for us, but for the characters. Cringy moments, right? Having to give your friend money, that's not a good moment for your friend or for you. It's horrible, right? It's terrible. And they pulled that off very well. Very well. Although I think when Matt looked at them and said thank you, that was, I think this is probably just me, but that felt a little too direct, a little too sycophantic. I don't know, really. It just felt a little embarrassing for me, but that might just be my personality. Sound and the music, I didn't really notice anything. I can't remember the tune of the song that played during the Lan finding the sheep and such. However, the wind on the bridge, that was good. That was good wind. I've heard Bad Wind in movies, and that was really pretty good. That's yeah, that sounded good, really good. Accuracy as to the books. We never really get any exact mention of what Naive and Egwene are doing regarding listening to the wind. And given what Moraine has to do to train Egwene on the road, I would say they're pretty much doing nothing. Because in the books, I believe Egwene is really kind of just barely reaching the level where you would start that. So I think that's slightly inaccurate. The boys giving Matt money, none of that stuff was in the book. They didn't play up any of the poorness. Am I off on that one? I might be off on that one. I don't remember Matt being much more poor than anybody else. That was really early chapters. Maybe I've forgotten that. It's an interesting idea that the Trollocs would form the dragon's fang out of sheep. What's that about? Is someone attempting to communicate with them? Is it an instinct? Are they communicating with one another? Maybe it's the Trolloc army or the Fades communicating with the Trolloc scouts who are out doing things. This is the location you're going to attack tomorrow night. This one and the 5 other dragon's fangs we've just placed on farms around the area with boys at the age of X, between X and X and Y. Yeah. Interesting.